What's up, everybody? It's your boy, the Ethical Badger, and I'm back at it with the content. Today's video is, we're starting off spicy, guys. I'm going to be doing a reaction of a clip from Good Morning Britain, and the clip is titled, "Do We Need to Censor Humour?" Let's get into the clip and just look at the general sort of debate they're having about censoring humour.
Contract. This is the UNICEF on campus at SOAS, right? Part of University of London. By signing this contract, you are agreeing to our no-tolerance policy with regards to racism, sexism, classism, ageism, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, or anti-religion or anti-atheism. You basically couldn't do a joke about anything.
And it says that all jokes must be respectful and kind.
Right. Since when was comedy supposed to be respectful and kind?
I'd have to walk away from this programme if that was the case.
Now, see, that is one thing that gets me, is they're inviting a comedian to a charity event. That's only just dawned on me, really. If you're inviting a comedian to a charity event, surely that implies you're going to be wanting jokes to be told. And, you know, that seems kind of strange to me. Why would you invite a comedian to an event? I suppose, you know, you could be making the very light-hearted, sort of respectful type of jokes. And, you know, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, because on one hand, you're inviting a comedian to an event that's going to be telling jokes. And I think jokes should really be as free as possible, as I'll get into, I'm sure, as the clip goes on. But on the other hand, yes, it's a charity event. I can understand why they're wanting to be careful about it. They don't want, coming out of the event, you wouldn't want the media to be saying, oh, there was this offensive joke told at the event, blah blah blah. You want to have a good representation of the event and a good name associated with UNICEF. You don't want that link to be between UNICEF and, oh, someone told an off-colour joke and they were okay with it, they allowed it. I can understand why they wouldn't want that sort of reputation or sort of opinion to be held about their company.
Right, exactly. The whole point of comedy is it sort of sends things up and people up, right?
Well, I'm glad you understand that. I'm glad you understand that. What this is about is people who insist on their right to take jokes literally and then use it against the comedian. You might have followed the story only a few days ago in America, where a comedian called Nimesh Patel, a very progressive, woke comedian, went on stage at a student gig. He was doing these very progressive, woke jokes, and the student audience, decided to misinterpret his jokes and call him racist, the second-generation Indian American, take him off stage and label him for the rest of his life as a racist. Right.
That is something that does annoy me, is people deciding someone else's intent. You go into a comedy show, you know, you should be expecting that someone's making jokes, and the likelihood is they're not believing the stuff they're coming out with. Because if in general, if someone's coming out with a shocking joke, the intent is to shock. The intent is not, I'm getting across my opinion, my views. The intent is, I'm going to think of a really horrible thing to say in the context of a joke to shock people, and then that's going to generate laughter. So that is something that really annoys me, is people specifically looking to take jokes seriously, because the whole point, I don't even know why I'm explaining that, but the whole point of a joke is that it's meant to be, you know, it's meant to be taken lightheartedly, and you know, you're supposed to realise the intent of the comedian in general is not that they're coming across in a serious manner.
This is what happens. I'll give you this one example very quickly. I was on stage in a comedy club a few months ago as a Russian comedian talking about American politics. And this American guy stands up and he goes, "The problem with Russians is you don't understand democracy."
Oh, see, that gets me. What kind of a heckle is that at a comedy show? You stand up and you oh, why do people, why are you going to a comedy show? Stop. Why?
You're laughing at my American accent there, right? And I said, what do you mean? Got Trump elected, didn't we? Right. Now, it's a joke. I don't have any idea whether Russia got Trump elected or not. But if you're one of these woke students, you probably think that Donald Trump is a white supremacist. Yep. So what I've literally...
But political jokes against Trump are okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But what you think when you hear that joke is I'm endorsing the election of white supremacist neo-Nazi president. when it's just a joke. I have no idea. I've never met Donald Trump. It's ridiculous.
I think you're doing some quite complicated sort of mental arithmetic to offset the fact that people didn't think you were funny.
Oh, there it is. And there it is. There it is. There's the big one. People didn't think you were funny. Well, this is actually a good point to bring up, because comedy is one of the most subjective things on this planet, to be really truthful. So, you know, people are gonna tell jokes, and some people aren't gonna find them funny, and guess what? That's okay. And this might sound crazy, bit of a revolutionary idea here, but if you're at a comedy show and you're not finding the jokes funny, you can leave. Whoa. I know. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yep, I know. But you can do it. You've got legs, and you can stand up out of your chair and leave.
I think the reality is...
These students saw me performing a top secret...
Oh, right. Oh, yep. Okay. A grown woman just shushed a grown man. Okay. I want to rip my dick off. That was ugly. In a civilized... Are you 12? You're on television having a debate with an adult, and you just shushed him with your finger. Ooh.
Okay, when I come on here, I'm not allowed to swear, right? That's the deal. So no swearing on breakfast
you just have to apologise.
But I won't come back. I think if I say the F word, I might not be invited back. So when you go on television, there are rules. There's watershed, there's things you can't say. So we all agree that there are some things you can and can't say in some contexts. What this is a negotiation about what you can say where. Whoever pays the piper calls the tune.
He couldn't say anything about anything.
So as one, well, if you're a really good comedian, you can be funny without being offensive.
Whoa. Two things there. First point she makes, I can get behind that. I understand that. You know, she makes a very good point that you can't swear on morning television. That we have societal boundaries, and at the end of the day, say for ITV is a private company, they can dictate what gets said on their program. They can decide the level of words that's used. And she makes a good point about the watershed. You know, again, it's a societal thing. It's up to the company to set those boundaries, and it was absolutely UNICEF's right to set those boundaries. But I think the interesting thing here is not necessarily that one isolated situation. Is it's the bigger idea that this throws up about censoring comedy, which is something that is a debate that is rife these days. And then she drops the big old bombshell of, you can be funny without being offensive. Can you though? Because two things that are highly subjective. As I said before, comedy is highly subjective, offence is highly subjective. This is my main point here that I want to make, is that comedy should just be open, because it is such a subjective thing. It should just be allowed to be free and breathe, and people should be able to tell what jokes they want. Because there's no such thing as something that's not funny. There is something that you don't particularly find funny, because humour is subjective, and our society allows for different and diverse types of humour. Just because you don't think it's funny doesn't mean someone else doesn't. The concept of humour is not owned by one particular person or one particular group of people who decides and overlords and says this isn't funny, therefore it mustn't be said. That's not how it works. Comedy is subjective and should be treated as such, and should be given free rein. If you don't like what's said at a comedy show, leave the fucking comedy show. It's not hard.
I was funny, and that's why they invited me on the show.
What kind of joke do you find funny?
I find really offensive humour very funny, personally.
You do?
I like really, really rude humour.
I'm outraged.
But I go and see it because I know that's what I'm getting myself into. I've made the choice to go and see somebody who pushes the boundaries.
So have these.
But on a student-sanctioned, on a university event, you can't have jokes about being gay or being trans or about ethnicities, because they're putting their name to it.
You can't have. You don't think they should have. You've made a very interesting point there. You know, you like offensive humour, but then suddenly you're saying that all universities should hold themselves to this same sanctimonious account of not allowing any racist or transphobic jokes on campus. You know, at the end of the day, if a university wants to hold that, they can. If there's students that are wanting to see that, a university should be able to put that on. If you're someone who is transgender and doesn't feel comfortable in the presence of transgender jokes, that's completely understandable. Because I mean, chances are you've gone through a lot in your life, and if you feel like getting mocked, that might make you feel uncomfortable. That might make you feel upset, and that's completely understandable. And you're absolutely entitled to those feelings, as anyone else is. But in those situations, you don't tell people they can't make the jokes. You remove yourself from the place of the joke. They're not directly coming to you with the joke and throwing it in your face. If someone is doing that, fair enough, there may be a case for having a bit of a conversation there. But if you're going to an open event where such a joke is being made, you have the ability to remove yourself from that situation, because that person is not directing those comments at you. They're throwing a joke out into an open room, into an open environment, which is free for people to exit and leave. Therefore, I think in that situation, they are absolutely doing nothing wrong. It's up to that person to remove themselves from that situation in which they feel uncomfortable. That is what ought to happen in that situation. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm crazy.
Last 2 years, Piers, we've had comedians go on stage repeatedly on Live at the Apollo and every comedy club in the country and call Brexit voters, and I voted Remain, by the way, old, stupid people who shouldn't be allowed to vote, and we can't wait for them to die. Is that not ageism?
Of course it is.
Yes, it is.
It is ageism.
Yes, but
You wouldn't be able to make that joke.
I would defend to the death their right to go and do that, even if I don't agree with that point of view.
That is exactly the point I'm trying to make. You know, okay, maybe he's trying to say a particular group of people would be the people that are against these jokes is the type of people who would be pro Remain and anti-Brexit. But he throws up a very good point there. You know, there's always I'm seeing a lot of humour that is calling. You know, that is putting down people of that nature, and but this is the thing: it's allowed. It should be allowed. But then it's these same people who would be telling these kind of jokes that would maybe then want to be shutting down other types of jokes. Again, it's the same thing as I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but humour is subjective. Maybe you find taking the piss out of Brexit voters funny. And to you, that might be funny. To me, that could potentially be funny. To other people, that might not be funny. But then again, that to other people, making what one might deem as racist or sexist joke, that might be funny. But to other people, that might not be funny. It's too subjective, and it's literally a person by person basis. Because I mean, to give an example, you know, me and my mum. There's lots of humour that we both share, but then I've got a lot of sections of my sense of humour that's different to her. Humour intersects, and there's places where it doesn't, and it's different for different people, and it's too big and complex to be putting it into boxes of this is funny and this isn't funny. Who has the right to do that? Who?
Make a racist joke.
No, of course not.
No, so there are some limits.
There are some
then,
things that you think aren't okay. So make it a
But
gay,
where
a gay
are these
joke's
racist
okay.
comedians?
Are gay jokes okay?
Yes, gay jokes are okay, because all jokes are okay if it's a joke. That's another thing that is the nature of comedy. It's playing up to something. It's not okay. Yes, people might reveal their true views through comedy, but these days you're seeing it's more, I would say, on the left, if I was going to be, you know, generalizing. Okay, maybe in some situations people might be veiling their bigotry within comedy. But if so, is that the same as actually coming out and being serious? Because if you're making a joke about it, you're still saying this is something we're laughing about. So it's not something to be taken too seriously. And people will not take it on board as something of, this is what this person thinks, you know, this is a serious thing. They're taking it on board as, ha ha ha, that was a wrong thing to say, but I'm going to laugh because it was taboo. I agree, it's a tough one. It's a tough situation, but that's just the nature of comedy, and comedy must be protected, I think.
Hang on, so you agree with the no racism part?
Of course, I've accepted people who've said to me.
But you've picked where the line is then. You've said racism's not okay, but these things are.
Yeah,
we
had an enlightenment 200 years ago, which was about allowing people to criticize religion.
Okay, but
I come from the Soviet Union.
Fine.
I come from the Soviet Union.
Homophobia
This is exactly
fine,
the kind of letter a comedian would have been sent to the
As a
Soviet Union.
Catholic, I like Catholic jokes.
I like Catholic.
Okay, so I think Constantine does lose a few points here by saying, such and such jokes won't be okay. But then again, the other woman's coming back saying, we all have our own personal lives. Okay, then, but you're doing exactly the same thing. You're saying this type of joke shouldn't be said in this context. So when he makes the same point of view as you have already made, you're having a go at him for it. Oh, what a pair of clowns we got going on today, guys. And then here we go, old Shovel Chin's coming in saying I like Catholic jokes. I mean, I don't like to agree with Piers here, but, one should be able to take the piss out of oneself and one's background and one's religion. And that's what I think, for me, that's one of the joys of life, is to be able to take the piss out of yourself. Because if you take yourself too seriously, life can be very boring and you can become a bitter person. And I think that's genuinely true.
Jokes, but I wouldn't make them on a church fundraiser. I'm Catholic. I think Catholic jokes are hilarious.
Why wouldn't you make them on a church
precisely
fundraiser?
the point to make Catholic
Because I know my room, and if you go in and make a joke about priests being paedophiles, it's going to be a very silent reaction.
Well, you don't know that. You don't know that that's going to be a silent reaction. If someone is paying to see a comedian that they expect is going to be telling that kind of joke, they'll probably laugh at that kind of joke. Don't assume audiences. Don't assume no one's laughing at that just because you aren't, just because maybe your demographic aren't laughing at those jokes. It's going to be a very silent room. How the fuck do you know if it's going to be a silent room? Like I said, if people are expecting those kind of jokes, if people are going in for that kind of humour, then they're going to laugh at it. And there is an audience out there for that kind of humour, as there's an audience for all kinds of humour, big or small. Those audiences will exist. So don't be ignorant to it and just think, oh, just because I wouldn't find that funny, or just because a certain group of people, I don't think the majority would find that funny. What do you know? People only really know their own experiences and their small group and maybe demographic around them. As the old saying goes, to assume makes an ass out of you and me. Let's continue.
If you want a laugh...
How do you know? Are you a comedian? Have you ever been on stage?
I'm not a comedian,
That's precisely the place to do a paedophile joke, if you can do it cleverly enough.
Sorry,
that's precisely the place.
I would definitely say there is never room to joke about that.
I'm not sure...
Oh, come on, Susanna. Come on, Susanna. What are you talking about? Oh, that's never acceptable. It's never okay to make a... This is exactly the point I'm trying to make. We have these societal taboos of oh, it's never okay. It's never okay to joke about this. It's never okay to joke about that. Who's defining these limits? Who is It's just we get this idea in our heads of one can't do that. This is never okay. Who says? There's no rule out there. There's no laws, decree, the 10 commandments of things that cannot be joked about. I just feel like I'm talking to... Well, I mean, I'm talking at a camera for one thing, but I feel like I'm just talking at a brick wall.
When James Corden did the Me Too, just after #MeToo, he did jokes about Harvey Weinstein, and they weren't very good. It was very lazy,
tumbleweed.
and everyone was like, oh, God.
You're right, they were not good jokes. You just have to write better jokes. That's all it's about.
But you also have to know your room, and that was a room full of people, many of whom had actually been sexually assaulted, allegedly, by Harvey Weinstein.
I agree.
So know your room, know your audience.
And write better jokes.
We could talk about write better jokes. Again, we do. There is, I suppose, somewhat of a societal norm of what is considered a witty joke or a clever joke, and a lazy joke might be easier to get at. But again, there's going to be people that are going to laugh at those lazy jokes. So are we just getting rid of lazy jokes just because they're lazy? I mean, that doesn't seem quite right. That seems maybe a little bit elitist, I would say. I might be getting a bit too spicy there, and I might be getting a bit of a hypocrite. You do have to know your room. And if you're making Harvey Weinstein jokes in Hollywood, that's... it's and you're interviewing celebrities and you're in that world, making light of it can often help a situation, but those are the kind of people that probably wouldn't be laughing at that, because that seems to be a crowd that takes that sort of thing very seriously. I defend James Corden's right to make those jokes. I think maybe he should have been a bit more savvy in terms of his own personal standing, and I can understand why people would be like, "Oh, mate, that wasn't a good idea." But again, it shouldn't be a reason for him not to be able to tell those jokes. That he should still be allowed, and if anything, that can be a strong learning curve for him. Realizing that maybe in that world people won't take kindly to that kind of humour.
Did your jokes like this?
Well, we can make jokes about sexism.
You can make jokes about anything you want, but you need to think about what
but
the
he was told he
consequences will
couldn't.
You need to think about what the consequences will be when you're telling a joke. If you're constantly thinking in the back of your head, what's the consequences going to be when I'm telling this joke? Oh God, what's going to happen? You're never going to tell a good joke because you're constantly going to be second guessing yourself and constructing and closing things off in your mind, and that's never going to make for a good comedy show.
Make a quick point.
Yeah,
Right?
final
Better be quick.
This story has nothing to do with comedy. The reason the story has gone viral, the reason hundreds of thousands of people have watched the videos that we've put out of me reading out this contract on stage and mocking it, is that ordinary people feel in their own lives, they see this in their own lives.
can't say anything anymore.
say anything that they think.
Yeah, okay.
I've had messages from radical feminists saying to me, if I go and express my opinion in my workplace, I'm going to get fired tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is what it's about. It's about ordinary people who feel that they cannot speak their mind.
I do think this is something we are facing these days, is people not being able to say what they think. I mean, for instance, this is my first opinion-based video on YouTube, and I won't lie, I'm a bit nervous about putting it up, because these are opinions that maybe aren't necessarily seen as commonplace these days, or might be seen as a little bit outside of the box. But this is one thing I truly do believe in, is unless you give someone the ability to say how they feel, you won't be able to lay it out there, deconstruct what they're saying, and make a further point about it, and give your rebuttal. What I'm trying to say is, if you don't let the other side speak, that makes you look bad, because it makes you look like you haven't got the counterpoint, or you feel like you can't defend yourself, and they might have a better point.
Constantine, thanks very much
wasn't
indeed.
that
Rebecca,
quick.
thanks very much indeed. Do
It's
you remember
honestly-
once someone made a joke about you?
Huh?
Do you remember Hugh Grant once made a joke about you in the Red Nose Day,
Oh, yeah.
actually? And I,
About me dying, wasn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
I actually didn't think it was funny and
you left.
protested.
Well, there we go. That's a very good way to end this. Is Susanna Reid heard a joke she didn't like, so she left the room, and that should be the way that it's done. If you don't like the joke, thank you, fuck you, bye. And on that note, I want to say thanks for watching my first video back. Hopefully it wasn't too spicy for you. Hopefully you can handle it, and I'll see y'all's asses later on. Cheerio, folks.